A jade butterfly pin worth millions at auction. An elderly woman in worn clothes slips it into her pocket while the wealthy crowd sips champagne. When security confronts her, no one expects her to be the pin's original owner, or that she's about to donate her entire collection to the museum the others have been refusing to fund. Before we dive into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from. The soft clink of crystal champagne flutes echoed through the marble-floored auction hall. Rebecca Chen stood near the refreshment table, her threadbare cardigan a stark contrast to the designer gowns and tailored suits surrounding her. At 62, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a simple bun, she seemed almost invisible to the elite Manhattan crowd. She traced a finger along the edge of the display case. Inside sat a jade butterfly pin, its emerald wings catching the light, surrounded by smaller diamond accents. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said beside her. Rebecca turned to find a young man in a server's uniform. His name tag read, David. "Yes," she replied quietly. "More beautiful than they know." David tilted his head. "You really seem to appreciate it." "I should," Rebecca said, her voice barely audible. "I designed it." Before David could respond, a tall woman with perfect blonde hair approached, champagne glass in hand. Vivian Hargrove, the auction house director, wore a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sorry," Vivian said, not sounding sorry at all. "The viewing area is for registered bidders only." Rebecca met her gaze. "I'm here for the butterfly pin." Vivian's smile tightened. "That particular piece starts at $3 million. Perhaps something in our general collection would be more," she glanced at Rebecca's worn shoes, "suitable." A flush crept up Rebecca's neck. She'd faced this dismissal countless times since losing her fortune. "I'm quite interested in this piece specifically," Rebecca insisted. Vivian's laugh tinkled like ice in a glass. "Security is just over there. Let's not make this difficult." She turned to the gathering crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, our auction begins in 20 minutes. Please take your assigned seats." Rebecca felt a gentle touch on her elbow. David nodded toward the exit. "Maybe I can help you find something else," he offered kindly. As they walked away, Rebecca heard Vivian addressing a group of wealthy patrons. "The Chen collection is extraordinarily rare. Each piece designed by Rebecca Chen before her company's unfortunate collapse. Such a tragic story. Her entire legacy scattered to the winds." Rebecca's steps faltered slightly, but she kept walking. Rebecca returned the next day, this time in the back row of the crowded auction room. She'd borrowed a black blazer from her neighbor to appear more presentable, but still felt the stares of those around her. "Lot 27, the jade butterfly brooch from the Chen collection," the auctioneer announced. "Opening bid at $3 million. Hands lifted throughout the room. Vivian stood at the side, nodding encouragingly at the wealthiest bidders. $4 million, 4.5, $5 million. Rebecca watched silently as her creation, the piece she'd designed for her mother's 70th birthday, became a trophy for the ultra-wealthy. The butterfly had been her mother's spirit animal, representing her transformation from a poor immigrant to a respected artisan. Going once at $7 million, the auctioneer called. Rebecca stood. "I have a question about the provenance." The room fell silent. Vivian's eyes narrowed. "This is highly irregular," the auctioneer stammered. "The certificate states this piece was acquired legally," Rebecca continued, her voice growing stronger. "But I never sold it. It was stolen during the bankruptcy proceedings." Vivian rushed forward. "Security, please remove this woman immediately." Two guards approached as murmurs spread through the crowd. That's Rebecca Chen herself, someone whispered loudly. The designer? I thought she'd left the country. Rebecca reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded document. I have proof of ownership here, plus the original design sketches. One of the security guards took her arm. Ma'am, you need to leave now. Check the back of the pin, Rebecca called out as they escorted her toward the exit. My mother's initials are engraved beneath the setting, along with mine. LYC and RC, something not mentioned in your catalog. Vivian's face had gone pale. This auction will take a brief recess, she announced, hurrying toward the display case. Outside in the lobby, Rebecca sat on a bench, hands trembling. David appeared with a cup of water. Are you really Rebecca Chen? He asked, eyes wide. She nodded, exhaustion evident on her face. Not that it matters anymore. The third day, Rebecca arrived in her finest clothes, a simple black dress she'd preserved from her designing days. The auction house buzzed with tension. Several reporters lingered near the entrance, alerted by yesterday's drama. Vivian intercepted her immediately, flanked by 2 security guards and a severe-looking man in an expensive suit. Miss Chen, Vivian said coldly, this is Mr. Blackwell, our legal counsel. Your disruption yesterday was completely unacceptable. Mr. Blackwell adjusted his glasses. We've verified the provenance documents. The piece was legally acquired through the bankruptcy settlement. That's impossible, Rebecca replied. My personal collection was excluded from those proceedings. By now, a small crowd had gathered. Rebecca recognized several prominent collectors who'd purchased her work over the years. If you continue with these false accusations, Mr. Blackwell warned, we'll be forced to pursue legal action for defamation. David appeared at the edge of the group, concern evident on his face. He'd been helping Rebecca research the auction catalog after his shifts. Vivian smiled thinly. Perhaps Miss Chen is confused. After all, her financial troubles must have been quite distressing. Laughter rippled through some of the onlookers. A woman in diamonds whispered loudly, I heard she had a breakdown. The butterfly collection isn't just jewelry, Rebecca said, her voice clear despite her humiliation. Each piece tells my family's story. The jade butterfly was the last piece I created with my mother before she died. How touching, Vivian replied, voice dripping with sarcasm. Nevertheless, the auction will proceed. Now, if you've come to bid legitimately, you're welcome to stay. Otherwise, she nodded to the security guards. Mr. Blackwell stepped closer. We've been generous enough to verify your claims, Miss Chen. They're baseless. The butterfly pin and the entire collection were legally acquired. By whom? Rebecca asked. Our clients prefer anonymity, Vivian interjected. Standard practice. Rebecca locked eyes with her. Show me the ownership transfer documents then. Vivian's smile faltered slightly. That's confidential. Because they don't exist, Rebecca said quietly. Not with my signature. A tense silence filled the auction hall. The crowd, initially amused by the confrontation, now shifted uncomfortably as they sensed the balance of power changing. Actually, came a confident voice from the entrance, those documents definitely don't exist. Heads turned to see an elegant woman in her 40s striding toward them. Rebecca's eyes widened in recognition. Jessica Zhang, District Attorney's Office, the woman announced, flashing her credentials. We've been investigating the suspicious liquidation of Miss Chen's assets for months. Vivian's face drained of color. This is a private auction. You have no jurisdiction. We have a warrant, Jessica interrupted, handing Mr. Blackwell an envelope, and substantial evidence that several pieces from the Chen collection, including the butterfly pin, were removed from Ms. Chen's home before the official inventory. The murmurs grew louder. Several guests began discreetly moving toward the exits. Jessica continued, her voice carrying throughout the hall. We've traced a pattern of theft involving bankruptcy personnel who were supposed to be protecting Ms. Chen's assets. Mr. Blackwell scanned the documents, his professional demeanor crumbling. Vivian, we need to speak privately. Now. But Vivian seemed frozen, her eyes darting between Jessica, Rebecca, and the increasingly curious crowd. The auction is suspended pending investigation, Jessica announced. Rebecca stepped forward, suddenly commanding the room's attention despite her simple attire. I didn't come here to cause trouble. I came because these pieces represent my family's legacy. She walked to the display case, holding the jade butterfly. This pin contains jade that my grandmother carried from China during the revolution. My mother polished it for years before I could afford to set it properly. David appeared at her side, carefully opening the case. Miss Chen, would you like to examine it? With trembling fingers, Rebecca lifted the butterfly pin. She turned it over, revealing the tiny engraved initials hidden beneath the setting. Tears welled in her eyes as she traced her mother's initials with her fingertip. This collection was never meant to be locked away in private vaults, she said, her voice growing stronger. It was created to tell a story of immigration, of struggle, of transformation. The room had gone completely silent. Rebecca looked up at the crowd, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. These pieces were meant to be seen, to inspire. She carefully placed the butterfly pin back in the display case. That's why I've decided that regardless of how this investigation concludes, I want my entire collection to go to the Metropolitan Museum's permanent exhibit. A collective gasp echoed through the hall. Jessica stepped forward. Miss Chen, that collection is worth tens of millions. I'm aware, Rebecca replied. And it belongs where everyone can see it, not just those who can afford to bid. Vivian, recovering slightly, forced a laugh. You can't donate what you don't legally own. Actually, Jessica said, pulling another document from her portfolio, the preliminary injunction I've filed freezes all sales pending investigation. And our evidence strongly suggests Miss Chen is the rightful owner. The crowd began whispering furiously among themselves. Several of New York's most prominent collectors approached Rebecca. If what you're saying is true, said Carlton Wells, a silver-haired man known for his philanthropic work, this is the most significant jewelry donation in decades. It would require substantial funding for proper display and security, another collector added. Funding the museum hasn't been able to secure, Rebecca acknowledged. I know the Metropolitan has been struggling to complete their East Asian wing expansion. Carlton straightened his tie. Well, perhaps that's something we could address. My foundation has been looking for a meaningful project. As has mine, added another voice. Rebecca watched in astonishment as the very people who had dismissed her moments earlier now clustered around, eager to associate themselves with her unexpected philanthropy. David appeared at her side with a glass of water. You planned this all along, didn't you? He whispered. Rebecca took a sip, a small smile playing at her lips. Not exactly, but I knew if I could just get close enough to prove the butterfly was mine, everything else might fall into place. Vivian stood frozen at the edge of the crowd, watching her perfect auction, and possibly her career, unravel before her eyes. 3 months later, Rebecca stood in the newly renovated East Asian wing of the Metropolitan Museum. Her entire collection, 47 pieces in total, gleamed under perfect lighting in a circular display. At the center sat the jade butterfly pin. "Ms. Chen, they're ready for you," David said, now employed as the collection's dedicated docent. Rebecca smoothed her new silk blouse, modest but elegant. She'd accepted a position as creative consultant for the museum's educational program, teaching young artists from underserved communities. "You don't have to be nervous," David assured her. "Everyone's excited to hear from you." She smiled. "Old habits. I spent so long being invisible." The director led her to a podium where dozens of people waited, including many from the auction house scene. Vivian was noticeably absent. Last Rebecca heard, she was cooperating with investigators to avoid prosecution. "Ladies and gentlemen," the museum director began, "it is my profound honor to introduce Rebecca Chen, whose extraordinary generosity has made this permanent exhibition possible." Applause filled the hall as Rebecca approached the microphone. She saw Jessica Zhang giving her an encouraging nod from the front row. Beside her sat Carlton Wells and several other collectors who had contributed the necessary funds for the wing's completion. "My mother used to say that butterflies remind us that transformation is possible at any stage of life," Rebecca began, her voice steady. "These pieces tell the story of my family, but they also tell a universal story of perseverance." As she spoke, Rebecca noticed several young design students watching intently from the side. They'd been selected for the scholarship program funded by Carlton's Foundation, a program Rebecca would help lead. "For years after losing my company, I believed my legacy was gone," she continued. "I disappeared from public life, thinking I had nothing left to offer." She gestured toward the jade butterfly, its emerald wings catching the light. But legacies aren't just about wealth or possessions. They're about the stories we tell, the beauty we create, and the people we impact along the way. Rebecca took a deep breath, seeing many in the audience nodding in understanding. "I could have spent years fighting legal battles to reclaim these pieces for myself. Instead, I chose to ensure they would belong to everyone." Carlton Wells stood and approached the podium, handing Rebecca a leather portfolio. "Miss Chen, on behalf of the museum board, we'd like to present you with this token of our appreciation." Rebecca opened it to find official documentation of the Rebecca Chen Design Fellowship, a program that would provide full scholarships to 10 promising designers from disadvantaged backgrounds each year. Her hands trembled slightly as she closed the portfolio. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "This means more than you know." After the ceremony, Rebecca moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and fielding questions about her designs. Several former industry colleagues who had distanced themselves during her financial troubles now approached with business cards and partnership proposals. "You must be drowning in offers," Jessica commented, appearing at her side with 2 glasses of champagne. Rebecca accepted one with a smile. "It's strange how visibility changes everything. 3 months ago, I couldn't get past the front desk of these same companies. And now? Now I have the luxury of choosing carefully," Rebecca replied. "I'm more interested in mentoring new designers than rejoining the corporate world." David approached, leading a group of wide-eyed design students. "Miss Chen, these are the first fellowship recipients," he said proudly. "They have so many questions about your butterfly technique." As Rebecca turned to greet them, she caught sight of her reflection in one of the display cases. Shoulders back, head high, confidence restored. The butterfly had indeed come full circle. For an hour, Rebecca answered questions about her designs, her techniques, and her journey. she revealed the secrets behind the intricate wire wrapping method she developed and explained how to identify authentic jade. The students hung on her every word. "Miss Chen," asked a young woman with bright blue hair, "what advice would you give someone starting out today?" Rebecca considered the question carefully. "Learn the rules thoroughly. Then be brave enough to break them intentionally. And remember that setbacks, even devastating ones, can lead to new beginnings." After the students departed, Carlton approached with several board members. "Rebecca, we'd like to discuss expanding the exhibit to include a working studio space. Visitors could watch actual creation happening." Her eyes lit up. "A transparent design process? I love that idea." "We'd want you to lead it, of course," Carlton continued. "A full-time position with the museum." Rebecca hesitated, thinking of the corporate offers she'd received that morning, all promising to restore her to her former wealth and status. "I'd be honored," she said finally, "but I have one condition. I want half the studio staffed by artists from communities not traditionally represented in fine jewelry design." Carlton exchanged glances with the other board members, then smiled. "I believe we can make that happen." Later, as the crowd thinned, Rebecca found herself alone with the jade butterfly. She placed her palm against the glass, remembering her mother's words when they'd first designed it together. "The butterfly doesn't worry what others think of its time as a caterpillar. It simply spreads its wings and flies." As Rebecca stood there in quiet reflection, David approached with her coat. "The security team is doing final checks. They asked if you wanted to stay while they secure the displays." Rebecca smiled. "No. I think I'm ready to go. Tomorrow we'll be busy with the first class." They walked together through the now empty gallery, their footsteps echoing off marble floors. The transformation from that humiliating auction day to this triumphant evening still felt surreal. "You know," David said, "Vivian Hargrove reached out to the museum yesterday." Rebecca paused. "Oh?" "She's facing serious charges, but offered to provide information about other potentially stolen pieces from various designers' collections." He hesitated. "She also asked if you would consider writing a character statement." Rebecca's laugh echoed through the empty hall. Some people never change. Outside, the spring evening was mild, cherry blossoms drifting across the museum steps. A young woman approached tentatively, clutching a worn design magazine. "Miss Chen, I'm sorry to bother you. I've studied your work since design school." Rebecca recognized the magazine, a feature on her company from its heyday. "Would you sign this? Your butterfly collection inspired me to become a jeweler." As Rebecca signed, the woman whispered, "Thank you for showing that second acts are possible." Walking home later, Rebecca reflected on how quickly life could change, how the shame of bankruptcy had nearly destroyed her, and how standing up for her legacy had restored not just her reputation, but her sense of purpose. The taxi dropped Rebecca at her modest apartment building, a far cry from her former penthouse. Yet, as she climbed the stairs, she felt lighter than she had in years. Inside, she opened her jewelry box, containing just one remaining piece she'd managed to hide during the bankruptcy. A simple silver butterfly pendant, her very first design. Rebecca picked up her sketchbook, empty for so long. Her fingers, hesitant at first, began moving across the page with growing confidence. New designs flowed, not butterflies this time, but phoenixes rising from ashes. By morning, she had filled 10 pages with fresh ideas, infused with techniques she'd teach her students. These designs weren't about showcasing wealth. They told stories of resilience and renewal. As sunlight filtered through her window, Rebecca placed her mother's silver pendant around her neck. The weight of it felt like an anchor connecting her past to her future. True value, she realized, was never in the materials themselves. It was in the creative spirit that transformed them, in the stories they carried, and in the eyes that truly saw beyond surface appearances to the beauty beneath.